A Light Most Hateful by Hailey Piper. This is the second Hailey Piper horror book I've read, and I think she is one of my new favorite horror authors. I'm definitely going to be reading more from her. Earlier this year, I read A Game in Yellow, which is based off of the King in Yellow legend, which I haven't read, but I really liked that book, and when I started reading this book, A Light Most Hateful, I thought that I would like A Game in Yellow a little bit more, but the longer this book went on, the more twists kept happening. I think I liked this one even more than I liked that one. So I'm excited to see what else Hailey Piper has done. Now, I read this on audiobook, which I think was a mistake. It's not a mistake. The audiobook is good, but I think this prose is so lush. This is so good. There are so many themes in this. There are so many little details. There are so many dramatic lines. There are so many hints and clues and little things to piece together and little threads to tie together and little callbacks that I think I would have preferred, for me personally, if I had read this as a text and I could really sit with it and reread it and flip back and compare lines and see how this thing matches up with this thing in the end and things like that. I think this is a book that you can really reread. I think you'll notice new details every time you read this. I think once you start rereading this, you'll be like, oh my god, that's such a clue for this reveal later on. I think you'll see like the inklings of the major themes of this book that come up right from the beginning. I think this is a really smart book. I think this book is smarter than me. It's not that I'm dumb, it's that I haven't had time to sit with this because I just read it a couple of hours ago. And I'm probably going to move on to the next thing because that's what I do. I read a lot of books. But I think that this is a book I'm going to reread at some point. Maybe next year for next Halloween. I'm doing a Halloween series of videos here on the channel, and this one definitely fits it. This is the best horror book I've read so far, I think, and I would like to reread this again as the text. And I'd love to just experience this again and really delve into these characters and like their psyches. There's a ton of interesting things going on here, and I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm not going to do a full plot recap. Sometimes I do that, but for this I'm just going to give you the bare summary, the sort of setup for the story. And I think this story does a great job of setting itself up. It takes place entirely in one day, which I didn't know. I actually really like contained stories like that, but I didn't know that going in, so that was a pleasant surprise. But you get a sense that this will be a very short time frame of a story once you get started, because it's kind of an apocalypse story, and we have a group of people trying to survive the apocalypse. But it's not like a nuclear apocalypse. It's not zombies. It's sort of a little bit zombie-ish, but it's not zombies. It's not like biohazard infection apocalypse or anything like that. There's no like plagues. It's sort of supernatural, but you don't know what's causing it. And so it's really interesting, and you're always like, what is this? How does this happen? How does it work? Where are we going? How do we get out of this? How do we fix this? How do we survive? It's very thrilling, really action-packed, a lot of action, something always going on. These characters are great. There's not too many of them. It just keeps going in new, interesting places, and I really like this. I could really see this as a movie, to be honest. I think the structure and the visuals could work really well, and if you have a director or a cinematographer who's really into themes and like exploring the deeper meanings, you could get some really cool shots with this. I think this would be a cool movie. But anyway, we have our main character, Olivia. She is 18 years old, and she lives in a town called Chapel Hill, which is a small town that could be set any time. This is really like a timeless story. I initially sort of imagined it taking place in modern day, but I don't think there's any like cell phones, and there's no like references to technology. So this is really kind of timeless and could be any time, which I think works for this type of horror because it doesn't date itself. This won't feel outdated. You know, it's not a modern story where they have their phones and they have to rely on GPS and text and all of that. And then, you know, in a couple decades it looks totally outdated. This could happen anytime. You could read this anytime. It's very accessible. But she lives in this little town called Chapel Hill, but she has not always lived here. She has lived here for the past 3 years. When she was 15 years old, her parents saw her kissing another girl at the carnival, and she ran away from home. She doesn't even confront her parents. She doesn't even wait to hear what they're gonna say. She knows they're vaguely homophobic, but she doesn't necessarily know how they're going to react to their daughter being a lesbian, and so she just hightails it out of there, runs away. And I know you're thinking, That seems a little dramatic, and also not realistic because she's a minor. Wouldn't there have been police? Wouldn't there be a missing persons alert? Don't worry, I was also thinking that. There is more to the story. It all gets explained later. I think this book is very well thought out, and the author knows what she's doing. So for the past 3 years, she's made a life here in this little town, but she's still an outsider. She doesn't really have anyone except these two people, like this older couple who sort of took her in. She lives with them, but they're not like her foster parents. She sort of sees them as parental figures, but she's not really that close to them. She is not their daughter. But she is very, very close to her best friend, Sunflower. There is a character named Sunflower, and I did have the Harry Styles song stuck in my head for days while I was reading this. Every time I picked up this audiobook, I did have to immediately pause it and then go listen to Sunflower Volume 6 by Harry Styles, and then sing it in my head every time her name is said. I do feel like I need to warn you of that, because if you know that song, I'm pretty sure it will get stuck in your head while you're reading this. And sort of like Harry Styles, in the song, our narrator here is obsessed with Sunflower. She is in love with Sunflower. They are best friends, but there is no inkling that Sunflower feels the same way about her. Olivia has never admitted her feelings. In fact, on this night, Sunflower has plans to lose her virginity to this boy in their town who's always kind of been hitting on her, and he has a friend who's hitting on Olivia, but Olivia's a lesbian. She's kind of, playing it safe with them, but doesn't, actually commit to them, but is friends with them, yada yada yada. And we meet all of these characters at the drive-in where Olivia works. They're showing a picture, again, I don't know what year this is, but they're showing a movie, and Olivia's working here tonight, and she sees Sunflower off before she goes to, make Outlook, and she can go to make Outlook tonight and lose her virginity because everyone else is at the drive-in making out instead of at make Outlook or whatever. So we meet Sunflower, we meet the boys, and we meet the best character in the book, who is immediately incredibly interesting, a character named Christmas. Now, Christmas is the non-binary name final boss, but also while I was reading this, I did read a short story by August Clark where the non-binary character was named Saltpeter, which is the non-binary name final boss, second form. But anyway, this absolute weirdo named Christmas appears from the staff bathroom, and Olivia's like, how did you get back there? You're not supposed to be there. And Christmas is like, you just let your friend use the bathroom. I saw you do that. And they are, super cool, edgy, don't give a fuck, smoking cigarettes. Weirdo freak. Immediately the vibes are off, and you are like, this is a sketchy person in a horror novel. And I don't think their name is actually Christmas. I wish I remembered the metaphor they come out with. It's like, you can call me Christmas because I'm something. And then later in the book, Olivia says, oh, because you're a gift. It's a Christmas bomb. I don't know. It's a dumb name, but it sticks immediately, which is incredibly funny to me. That this character is just called Christmas throughout, and then they enjoy being called Christmas, even though I don't necessarily think that they were serious the first time they called themselves Christmas. So we meet this weirdo, and the vibes are off, and Olivia goes to check the staff bathroom, and there's a bunch of black sludge everywhere. And she's like, this fucking weirdo, dirtied the bathroom, like a weirdo. And then something even weirder happens in the drive-in. The boys she is friends with they start picking on this lady who just seems like a traveler lady. No one's seen her. She looks like easy prey, like maybe a homeless woman. And they start circling her, a group of boys, and then she gets up and she eats one of them. She swallows him whole. And at this point, Olivia's like, oh my god. And everyone in the drive-in is like, oh my god. And our apocalypse happens. And so we have this villain who is chasing them. Her name is Lizzie, because they call her a lizard. And she's like, yes, that's why they call me Lizzie, because I swallow people like a lizard. So I don't know if her name was actually Lizzie, but it works. They just go with the names in the moment, and it's really funny, but it also really works with the story, as you'll find out later on. And Lizzie also suspiciously kind of talks like Christmas, especially in the audiobook, the sort of weird, zombie-esque, evil voice. It's not really a zombie because they talk. I guess zombies don't really talk. but it's like an evil, croaky voice. But I did really like how in the audiobook there's a pretty distinctive voice for like the infected people, or like whatever these people are, and how some of them might be connected. And there are some people who are immune to this infection, but also if you touch one of the infected people, they like come after you. They like remember who you are. There's something about memory sharing, and like they'll want to find you if you are still alive. They will come find you. So Olivia is running from Lizzie, and she initially teams up with the guy who has a crush on her and was trying to help her at the drive-in, but really she's just in the way. And then Christmas becomes part of her crew, and Olivia is both running for her life, doesn't know who to trust, doesn't really trust Christmas, but also has to trust Christmas because there's only so many people who do not become infected by whatever's going on here, and she really has to find Sunflower. And I think that's where I'll stop, because I don't want to spoil anything. This was a really good book. There's so many twists. There's so many things that you can kind of call, but also not call. I got like a couple little things right, which made me feel smart, even though they're like clearly set up because the author knows what they're doing. But I also didn't get some things right, but I wasn't even mad when I got some things wrong. I'm like, oh, that's also a cool idea of what could be going on here. Just really interesting. It's a really unique sort of paranormal story, horror story, and it's not just vague zombies, cliche. There's nothing cliche here. Now I got a bone to pick with Goodreads, because this has a 3.15 rating, which is low. This is not a 3-star book. I gave this 5 stars. I could understand a 4 or a 4.5, but a 3.15, that's abysmal. That's so underrated. What are you guys doing? And I went to read through some of the Goodreads reviews because I was looking for people smarter than me who had really sat with this and analyzed it, and mostly I found a bunch of people dumber than me. I saw a lot of complaints about this book, and I didn't think any of them were valid, so I'm gonna rant about that. One complaint I saw was that everyone was criticizing this book for trying to have a message or a moral, and I'm like, have you read a book before? Do you guys know what a book is? Every book has some sort of message, even if it's not trying to. It's impossible to not have a message in a book. And maybe these are just horror readers who just want to read zombies, but even a zombie piece, the most cliche generic zombie piece, would have something to say about the resilience of human nature, or the strength of humans, and what we value, and the difference between surviving and thriving, or like something. So like, what are you mad about? What are you mad about? And I can understand if the criticism was that it's trying to do too many things, and therefore it doesn't spend enough time on any of the themes, and none of them get fleshed out properly. I don't think this was that at all. I think there's really only a couple themes here, and I think you could argue that there are more, and I kind of like that, because it's really deep, and I think different people would get different things out of this book. I think this would be a great book club discussion book, because I think every single person would see something else, or interpret some things in a slightly different way. I would love to hear other people talk about this. I should have looked up videos about this. That's probably what you did. There's probably not a lot of other videos if you're watching this one, but I hope someone else made a review about this. Because I want to hear other people talk about this. I want to read this again. I want to like really delve into it. This is a good book. There's so much here, and it's so well written. It's so well written. The prose is delicious. It's very vivid descriptions. There's great like horror, there's body horror, there's like cosmic horror, there's like emotional lines, there's like these really good metaphors and like big dramatic prose, but it's not purple prose. It's just a talented author who knows what they're doing. It's not just cliche zombie fiction where they're just running from zombies. There's great description, and like it really gets into the thoughts and the themes and like the existentialism of it, and it's fantastic. So I guess some people wanted a cliche brain dead zombie story. They're not gonna get that, but if you want a book with substance, here you go. Sorry. Another thing I saw criticized, and frequently from people who said they DNF'd the book, was that it talks too much about the description of the town and like street names and like directions and like where they're going, but like Maybe that plays a role. Like, maybe that has some significance. There is a lot of street talk. There are a lot of directions. But, maybe that's for a reason. Did you think about that? Maybe that plays a role later on. And I could understand not thinking that that would lead to something if this were a poorly written book, but it's clearly very well written, straight from the get-go. And when a book is well written, you have an inherent trust in the author that they are going to do right by you, and that the thing you're thinking about is going to get explained, or like the thing you're noticing is going to be relevant. So I feel like maybe that should not have been a deal breaker for you. And I know all those people DNF'd the book and then went away being like, yeah, that book wasn't well written, focused too much on useless random stuff. It wasn't useless. There was a reason. But they don't know that. So they think they know something. That's why I never DNF books. Because I don't want to look like an idiot complaining about something that wasn't actually a problem. Like, oh, it did become relevant after all. Even that thing I mentioned at the beginning about Olivia's backstory being, like, not that realistic, guess what? It gets explained. The author knows that. This is a talented author. They know what they're doing. You get more context. So, like, I just think if a book is good and you think something is off about it, there's a good chance that you should just trust that that thing's going to be explained. And I don't know why these people didn't know how to trust that. Maybe they don't read books. I think everyone who read this book doesn't read books. And that's a shame. It also has less than 300 reviews, which is tragic, because this was a really good book, and I think more people should read this. I feel like I want to read it again, just to spite all the people who DNF'd, so that this book has more reads. Because this book is so rereadable. I wish I had someone to talk about this with. If you've read this book, tell me your thoughts. Tell me your theories, or... I mean, I don't know theories, because everything gets wrapped up pretty well. I mean, you could always expand, but really it's about, like, the characters and the connections and, like, these big revelations that totally recontextualize the entire story and entire characters. And you're like, whoa. Like, you could really reread this and just get a totally new grasp on these characters, knowing something major about them that you don't know when you first read this book at the very start. Like, it would just be a great reread. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thoroughly recommend it. This is a great horror novel if you want substance and actual creepiness, actual horror vibes. Great for the horror season. I have nothing bad to say about this book. It was just good. It was just a good time. I just liked it more and more as we kept getting more reveals. I think this had great themes of obsession and your roots and where you came from and who creates you and what creates you and at what point are you your own person and at what point are you the amalgamation of other people's ideas, and to what extent are you controlled by other people and influenced by other people, and how do you and when do you break away from that, and belonging and acceptance and reality and life and perception. I mean, there's so much here, but again, it's not too much. It's not like all of these things are so textual and she's like blatantly explaining all of these themes. Like, you have to dig for them yourselves. And I think every person who reads this will really focus on something else. Like a different little aspect, maybe something you didn't even see. Again, a great book club discussion book, I think. I would absolutely recommend this for a horror book club if you do that or run one of those. I think you could reread this with a different theme in mind, like on every reread. Like, the first reread you could do, I'm going to focus on all of the obsession, and then you're like, I'm going to focus on creation and like what that means to be alive and to be a person, and anything like loneliness, sisterhood, friendship. I just think there's a lot here. And I liked the romance elements, which went way different than I thought. Is that spoilers? I feel like if I talk about it, it's spoilers. But maybe there's more love interests than you initially think. Because you initially just assume that Olivia and Sunflower will eventually get together. But do they? And then you've got Christmas, the hot non-binary evil weirdo who's maybe evil, maybe not evil. Maybe just like a butch with a heart of gold, but who doesn't want to show that? And like maybe they're a love interest. The gayness is a backseat to the plot, but a lot of the plot does revolve around how Olivia is obsessed with Sunflower, which is just like pretty gay. Like sapphic yearning could just be a theme in this. Sapphic obsession, the idea that you're like so transfixed on one girl because, I mean, Olivia doesn't really have anyone else in her life. She ran away from her whole life. This girl really is the center of her world, and I think that's kind of a relatable sapphic experience for a lot of people. A lot of people in small towns, like maybe you don't know that many queer people, and so you you gotta take what you can get, and then you sort of romanticize something and latch onto something. So this is about the most casual sapphic yearning relationship, you know. So you could really look at this through a queer lens. You don't necessarily have to look at it through a queer lens. Like you could just focus on general obsession, but also like you could definitely read this through a like specifically queer lens and like queer obsession, which the author was clearly going for, and the author was clearly going for all of these themes, and they're there, but they don't like hold your hand. They don't spell it out explicitly, and they don't try to hit you over the head with like too many morals. That's what these reviews were saying. These negative reviews. I don't know. It is not in your face. Like you have to dig deep. This would be like an artsy horror movie where you're like, what does that shot represent, and how do the colors represent the mood of this, and you fucking piece it together and write an essay yourself, and then you watch some pretentious ass video essay on YouTube about it. And you're like, oh, I didn't even notice that, but it's there, and it's rich and it's lush, and it's worth the effort of excavating for all of the little things and all of the details and all of the ways you could interpret this. What a good book. I'm really excited to read more Hailey Piper. I know she has several books, and I know a good chunk of them at least are queer in some way. And I'm reading her bio over here. It says she has over 100 short stories published. Those are probably good. That's a lot of short stories. I don't know if she has a short story collection. I mean, we're probably all in journals. That sounds great. So I'd probably recommend that. I've never read any of her short stories. This is only the second book of hers I've read, but like I've enjoyed it twice. And if she has that much content, and all of the books she's published have been in like the last couple of years. Like she seems pretty prolific. Again, 100 short stories, and like 2 books a year. And they're this quality. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be looking more into this author. I'm thoroughly impressed, and I'm very excited to read more of her, and to give this 5-star reviews to fuck the haters. Not to fuck to fuck over the haters, despite the haters. Why are you hating? Could I recommend like a coloring book? If you don't want a book that says anything, or says anything profound in a well-written way, would you like a coloring book?